This podcast is a project of the Climate Designers Network.
Hey, this is Eric. Welcome to Season 3 of Climify. This season, I'm talking to women across the globe who are at the forefront of climate science and climate action. Each guest is a thought leader in one or more of the drawdown.org climate solution sectors. What, you may ask, are the drawdown.org solution sectors? Well, important topics like renewable electricity, soil and agriculture, architecture, oceans, health, education, so much more. The goal of this season is, of course, to continue to help design educators incorporate a foundation of sustainability and regeneration into their courses, and, in turn, inspire more climate designers. Climate solutions are already here. You can literally start being part of the solution today. Climify brings these solutions to you. So no matter what your skill or knowledge level, you can implement what you learned today in your personal life and classroom. Jamie Beck-Alexander is the perfect person to kick off this season, as she is the director at Drawdown Labs, the inspiration for our show this year. In this discussion, she'll be talking about her work at Drawdown and why every job is a climate job. I hope she inspires you to imagine your work as an educator as one that includes climate action as part of its foundation.
Hi, I'm Jamie Beck-Alexander, founding director of Drawdown Labs at Project Drawdown, based in Duluth, Minnesota. And Project Drawdown's work is focused globally, though. And you can find me online on Twitter at JawBeckX or at Project Drawdown.
Jamie, welcome to Climify. I'm excited to have you on the program. You were one of the people I really wanted on the show after we determined the theme, and our focus this year is solutions from Drawdown. So I'm glad that you said yes.
Thank you for having me. It's really a thrill to be here with you.
Yeah, I feel like you're a little bit of a celebrity for me after how many times I've seen your TEDx video and in my classroom and such, but I really appreciate you making that.
Oh, thank you for saying that. It was definitely speaking from my heart, and
I could tell.
a bit of pushing the boundaries at that time. I guess it was a couple of years ago now, so it felt like it was a little bit pushing the boundaries. But
yeah, it was actually, because I guess it's just something that I think will be somewhat timeless as we go forward, unfortunately. But I definitely think you did start something with that video.
Thank you for saying that. I did not expect that, but I think it felt like something I was kind of doing under the radar, just like, sort of questioning what in the world we were doing by having, sustainability work owned by so few people. So I definitely didn't expect that it would have any traction, but I'm really happy to see that within a lot of sectors of society now, we're seeing climate work kind of expand and break down silos, which is really, I think, what we absolutely need to see in the world.
It's absolute. We need that happen. And I guess when you make something, it's hard to tell, right, what its impact's going to be, especially if you're not I guess you can determine how many views you've gotten, but what people do with that is like a whole other thing.
Exactly. It just feels like you have no idea if anything is ever going to reach anyone. Even with views, you're just sort of like, was I just talking into the ether?
Shouting into the void, this podcast is, right?
Right. And, it
listening?
did kind of, right. And it did kind of, I think it did ruffle some feathers with the people that at that time that I was mostly working closely with, which is chief sustainability officers inside corporations who were like, wait a second, that's my job.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I was sort of like, maybe you should be trying to work yourself out of a job or work to have the biggest team possible that's owned by everyone, not just owned by one or two people. But climate is such a deeply in, it's like a part of who a lot of us have become. It's like part
Yeah,
of who we are as people. And so I think there's a real pride in having that as part of your identity. And
totally.
so it's really something, yeah, I think saying like everybody should have climate as part of their job, it can be threatening too to people who have been working on it for a
Yeah.
while and put their heart and soul into it. So it's understandable, but I think it is where we need to move.
Yeah. And you've didn't start at Drawdown. You have a pretty impressive career. Let's see, USAID, Ceres. Did I pronounce that Ceres? Is it Ceres?
Series. Yep,
Ceres, yeah.
series. Hmm.
The Cultural Conservancy, lot of good work you've been doing. And I guess I'm wondering then, because I tend to ask this question a lot, is like, how did you get to where you are? Was this part of your ethos all along, or was there something that kind of triggered your movement into this impact work?
So when I look back on my career, I used to think that it was very random and sort of just like, how in the world did I took this very circuitous path, but now I can really see how it all sort of, wove together. My time I initially went into the workforce from college thinking I really wanted to work on public health and I really wanted to work in and supporting lower and middle income countries on health, and health related public health issues.
Yeah.
So I, went into government service at USAID, which is focused on, humanitarian assistance work. And in that time, I was based in Bangladesh and working there. And I happened to be there during the 2013 collapse
Oh
of
my
this
God. Yeah.
massive factory called the Rana Plaza.
Yeah. I remember that.
And you do, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I just happened to be working there in the U.S. embassy there, and um, it was I mean, just seeing what happened. It killed almost 1,000 Bangladeshi people, and a lot of U.S. companies, or several U.S. companies, had outsourced the manufacturing of their product in that factory. And there were such poor, conditions and oversight in that factory, and companies were sort of taking advantage of it and getting, these lower income countries to produce their stuff. And then with because there was little oversight and regulation, this horrible catastrophe happened. And that was really a turning point for me around corporate responsibility
Mm.
and just seeing the effect of, how large corporations have a very, very real effect on
Oh, yeah.
people's lives around the world. And at the same time was having this revelation about climate change living in Bangladesh, where, there were a few months of the year when I took a kayak to the office because the place is sinking and the monsoon, and the monsoon season is getting worse and worse. And Bangladeshi people knew what was happening, and it was clear to them that the glacier above them was melting because of climate change. And it was, I mean, there were just a lot of realizations I had in that time period working in
Mm.
Bangladesh, that I think kind of coalesced to just kind of inspire me to want to work on climate change as a foundational issue of everything else we care about, and then kind of really wanting to work on a corporate accountability within that.
Yeah. The corporate accountability part. I was just looking at, I shared this on Instagram story. Maybe it was yesterday, but the companies that are contributing the most since 2016 to our carbon emissions, gas and oil, coal, mining, the who's who of carbon emitters here, like Chevron, you name it, right? They have a huge role in all of this.
Right. And I mean, they there are names and faces too. Like there
Yeah.
are there are a handful of people, with their hands literally with their hands on the dials of how much of our greenhouse gas emissions continue to be churning into the atmosphere every second, making
Yeah.
this crisis worse. I mean, there are a finite number of people who are making those decisions day after day. And, I think part of our work within Drawdown Labs, and we don't work with big fossil fuel companies or oil and gas or mining companies,
Yeah. Good to hear.
but but we do try to say we're never going to get out of this by by relying on the same, power rests with a handful of people who are beholden to investors who need to show profit every single quarter, who are unable to think in the medium or longer
Yeah.
term about global, about our human and planetary health. And so so that's another part of, the importance of every job as a climate job is more people who may not be taught, have to be tied to, showing profit, quarter over quarter, who can actually help make decisions with the health of people and planet in mind. Having more people throughout the business raise their concerns, put their passion to work and their expertise to work can only help us, kind of move beyond the status quo that is putting all of our, everything we know and love at risk.
Yeah. More voices, more
Right.
participation, right? Well, let's
Yes.
talk about Drawdown Labs, because you are
I do
the
like drawdown lads.
yeah.
Oh,
That could be something. It could be a
I-
teacher.
or like a calendar or something.
Yeah, there you go. Right. The
The lads of
really
drawdown.
the lads of Drawdown. You could do a fundraiser for that.
Right.
I get like 1% of the profits from
Yes. Yes.
for my.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about Drawdown Labs, as you are the reason for our season this year, and I think I may understand why you started it, maybe from that time in Bangladesh, but why don't you go into the history of how you started Drawdown Labs and what its mission is?
Yeah, thank you. Well, so I guess I'll start with broader Project Drawdown, which is, sort of Drawdown Labs is one program of Project Drawdown, which is a nonprofit organization laser focused on climate solutions. So, what are the solutions to climate change? We have them in our hands today. We know what they are. We know the practices and technologies that we need to shift to get us out of this mess. And they're going to save us money. They're going to improve our lives, our health, our cities, equity, poverty. They're going to help us address all these other things at the same time. And so our broader organization's purpose is to lift up those solutions and make them tangible, actionable, and, kind of decision making worthy for different actors in society. So then within that, Drawdown Labs, the program that I sort of designed and launched 3 years ago, is focused on, okay, we have these solutions in hand. We know what they are, but they're not scaling quickly enough. They're not,
Yes.
we need them to scale so quickly that they displace the things we did in the past that are no longer compatible with thriving life on our planet. And so how do we get those climate solutions to scale and displace the bad stuff, right? The more carbon intensive ways that we used to do things. Well, one of the truths about our current economic system is that some of the biggest actors that are responsible for a big chunk of the problem also have the resources, the scale, the influence, the clout to be able to address this problem quickly.
Hmm.
So within Drawdown Labs, we sort of, with that understanding, we work with companies, investors, and then kind of philanthropists we're kind of known for our work with businesses because that's sort of where we started, and more recently are now working with investors and climate funders. But our goal is really to kind of use or even exploit the resources and scale that large corporations have and put it to work for a just climate future. And so, I think part of the design of Drawdown Labs early on was to address some of what I saw as major gaps in the corporate sustainability space. I came from another nonprofit called Ceres, where we worked deeply within the system to try to change, try to get companies to reduce their emissions. And it was sort of like, why are we taking this one by one approach, working with
Hmm.
one company at a time to try to get them to do marginally less bad
Oh, right.
over like 3 decades? Like, that is not, it cannot be a leadership position to achieve net zero by 2050. Like, if that's a leadership position, then we're all
We're doomed.
doomed. I was gonna say,
Sorry to say that, but
I'd use a different
Yeah.
Less PC word, but yes. And so, so Drawdown Labs was sort of a response to that saying, I'm sorry, but net zero by 2050 or even 2040 is not a leadership position. That's like
Yeah.
table stakes in order to actually, for the world to achieve net zero. It means that every company
Yeah.
needs to be there. And so, how do leading companies, go beyond just achieving net zero and also use their clout, their employee power, their political clout, their financial power through the banking relationships they hold, um, their governance practices? How do they help shift capitalism? To like
Yeah.
looking at many more of the leverage points that companies have to help achieve what we call achieve drawdown, which is this moment in time when emissions in the atmosphere peak and begin to steadily decline. So it's sort of about, a more holistic and more expansive definition of corporate climate leadership that leverages employees and capital and political power and all the things that companies have to be able to influence climate change for the better.
And how do you work with these companies? Is that something where you reach out to them, or is it a consultancy thing?
So we're not consultants. We're a nonprofit organization, and we're very committed to all of the work that we do with our business partners being a public good. So we believe that, we don't do bespoke one-on-one work that benefits one company. We have an agreement with our business partners that anything we do with them, we will make available to the broader world because every company needs
I
to do
love
the
that.
same thing.
Open source, right?
Yeah, I mean, the world doesn't benefit if just, a handful of companies
Yeah.
are able to make strides. So we really work with them in ways where we can aggregate their influence and push, push obstacle, kind of knock down obstacles to climate action. So we'll do aggregated policy letters, like when the Inflation Reduction Act, our business partners, many of them came together and supported and issued their loud and public support to Congress to act on climate change, to get investments supporting climate
Yeah. That was a
solutions.
big moment.
It was a very big moment. And, and it aligned with where, I, I believe, and I think many people believe that if companies are going to be able to achieve their emissions reductions targets, they need policy in place to help
They
them
do.
get there. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we do things like that. We support kind of cutting edge business climate leadership practice. So, how can we help our business partners provide green 401k options to their employees or
Yeah.
green retirement
I would like
plans?
that. I would like that.
Right? Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that should be the default, right? It's how do businesses push their banks? So, banks are finance the biggest five banks in the world are responsible for financing the fossil fuel companies. So how do corporations that have like billions of dollars in the bank, how
Yeah.
can they use that capital to say to their banks, hey, we've been banking with you. We have a ton of money in this bank, but we need
Yeah.
you to stop financing fossil
Yeah.
fuels
We're
and
going to
the
pull
things that,
out. Sorry.
or we're going to pull out, or we're going to, yeah, or we're going to go, we'll go elsewhere, or we are going to pressure you, and many companies aggregating together to say change, or we're all going to, we'll build our own green bank. Or like,
Yeah.
think there's pushing from the inside, that a lot of pushing from the inside that can happen with when you're talking about some of the biggest companies in the world. They can influence systems change on a real scale. So working with them around those things, and then also piloting, this idea of every job as a climate job. We work with our business partners to say, what does that actually look like beyond just a mantra? What does it look
Hmm.
like to tie OKRs or, specific job functions and responsibilities and achievements within the procurement team or HR or sales or marketing or the legal team? What does it actually look like to embed
Yeah.
climate action into those roles? So we do work with our business partners around that so that ideally, literally the sustainability team is sort of like the quarterback but there is climate action happening, across the business, but the sustainability team can kind of coordinate it and lead it, but like it's happening everywhere. So the
Yeah.
company is more of like an ecosystem with climate action being sort of the North Star.
Yeah, it does seem like you got it all covered with Drawdown Labs because in your working with the business partners, you have a maybe a top down, but with the every job is a climate job mantra, it's bottoms up, right? So it's kind of taking it from two different fronts, which I think is super smart. But
You totally, I feel like you sit in on our internal meetings. That's like
yeah.
exactly
Oh,
what
really?
we're I mean, that's what we try to do, work from, the grass tops and the grassroots. And, early on we were sort of
Hey,
like,
I saw right through it. Like,
you did, totally. And, and sort of like, how can we also be a little bit of a Trojan horse, to
right.
kind of get in there and try to, build good relationships and trust, but also speak the truth because we're on solid ground. We have climate scientists that in our organization who are telling us the truth about how quickly things need to change. And so we can like get in there, get inside get inside and really try to help change decision making from the inside.
Yeah. Change the
Yeah.
system within the system, right?
Right. I think we need to do both. I mean, there's this
I
like,
agree.
yeah, I mean, there's this, I think some people set it up as a conflict. Do I leave my current job and go find, or do I leave my current job and go find a climate job? Like, as you
Hmm.
said earlier, a job where sustainability is in the title or climate is in the title. Or do I, try to use my skills to make change from where I am now? And that's going to, everybody's going to make their own decision about that, but we need both. I don't
Yeah,
think
we
it's
do.
it's not one or the other. Like the existing system deeply needs to change and quickly needs to change. And we also need people, doing new things that can leapfrog and move faster. So I think we need both change from within and then change pushing it all forward from the outside.
We do. Last season, I interviewed two of my students. One of them, Sadine, she wanted to work in the climate field and really embrace that every job is a climate job mantra from within the system. And the other student I interviewed, Adam, at the same time, he said, that's not who I am, though. I'm going to kind of push it from the outside. And we had this
Mhm.
really cool conversation about that.
Oh, I would love to listen to that.
Yeah.
That is the heart of, I love that. I would love to listen to their conversation and how they both
Yeah,
came
if I
to
could
that
remember
realization.
off the top of my head what episode it was, I would tell you, but I do not.
I
It's
can go digging.
you can go digging, yeah. For anyone that's listening, if you missed that episode, it's one of the better ones because we really hear from the students, younger generation, about what they're thinking about when they're going into the workforce. And
Yeah.
I can tell you they are thinking every job is a climate job. They just don't know how to verbalize it until I think
Amazing.
they watch your video, Jamie. Then they know.
Yeah.
Then they know. Um,
I mean, it's funny. I actually used to, I was a mentor with another organization called Terra.do. I don't know if
hmm.
you've heard of them.
Oh, we had them on
They,
the show last season too.
oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was a mentor for them. And one person I was mentoring was grappling with this decision. He worked inside, like in the belly of the beast, like in one of the big oil companies, will remain nameless. But and he was deeply committed, deeply passionate about climate change, and it was grappling with: do I try to stay and like push things faster and try to organize employees internally and do more activism inside the company, or do I just do I say like I can't do this?
Yeah. Oh, I
And
totally understand that.
yeah, and it's definitely a personal decision, but I don't think vilifying people who work inside, I think we
Yeah.
also need those people to
Yeah.
push faster from the inside as well. So yeah, I'd love to listen to that episode. I'll have to dig it up from last year. Thanks for
Or
sharing that.
while we're talking, I'll slowly find it on my phone. But I will say that I can totally relate to the person that you mentioned from Tara in that prior to me going into teaching, I worked at a Fortune 50 company and ended up reading some, well, I know which book it was, Cradle to Cradle,
Hmm.
and really had basically a life changing moment. And I tried to go back to the workplace and I guess change it from within. But this is like 2002, I think, 2003. And I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have the vocabulary, the knowledge. And that's pretty much why I went to graduate school, to try to get that information so I could go change it from within. But then I felt, wait, I could teach and affect a lot more people all at once,
Yeah.
potentially. So that's why I got into education.
Oh, incredible. Wow. I love that story. What a inspiring story for your
Oh,
students.
well, speaking of which, it's episode 11
Oh,
from
okay.
season 2. So I,
Season
I dug
2,
it up on
episode
my
11.
phone while we were talking here.
Got it. Amazing.
Well,
Well, I'm
speaking
gonna
of
listen to it.
students, well, thank you. I would appreciate any input that you might have from that. Well, speaking of students, I teach. A lot of my listeners teach, and many students are looking to do a lot of good with the design knowledge that they have. And so they complain to me all the time that they look for a sustainable designer or something like that, designer for impact. And they cannot find enough job titles with that. So I'm wondering what your advice might be for any student wanting to work in climate action. And I think I know what you might say, but I need some more help with talking with my students about this.
Right. That's such a great question. I mean, on the highest, on the sort of the highest level, building the world that we all want to live in together and that is sustainable and, can inhabit, where we can all inhabit and thrive, life can thrive. That's a design question, right?
It is, yeah.
That's like yeah, like we've never, I feel like never in human history have we thought, thought intentionally and thoughtfully about what the world is that we want to live in together, right? It just sort of like happened.
Mm-hmm.
And now, like, we know that we need to rebuild every part of society and we know how to we essentially we have like sort of the tools like we solar panels, regenerative agriculture, indigenous land tenure, like we have the products, the things. Now we need to figure out like what does this look like in communities, what does this look like in a place like where I live in Duluth, Minnesota, and how is that
Yeah.
different from Austin, Texas, or Berkeley, California, and those are like some of the most exciting design challenges, I could imagine that, where designers coming together with climate scientists, coming together
Yep.
with builders. And I think that, on the very highest level, that's not an actionable thing, but just on the highest level, when you think about it, kind of theoretically, I think of it as a very exciting design challenge. And then, in terms of getting more practical, like what does it look like when you're looking for a job? Because we worked with a design firm, IDEO,
Yeah.
when I was launching Drawdown Labs, it was just me. I was the only
Just
person
you.
working on Drawdown Labs.
You did a great job.
But I was like, I don't know how to like I knew what I wanted to do. I had no idea how to build it. So the very first email I sent from my drawdown.org email was an email to IDEO where
Smart move.
I knew some people. I had done some consulting there in the past, and I was like, okay, I need like a design sprint with you all. Like, help me figure out what are the gaps am I trying to address? What is my organization's superpower? How do we structure this? How do we move mountains? How do we do? And they were instrumental and these weren't like climate designers. This was an
Yeah.
organizational designer. This was a systems designer. And it was kind of a bunch of people from throughout IDEO, not one of which had sustainability or climate in their title, and had probably never worked on many of them probably hadn't really ever worked on a sustainability challenge before, but they
Mhm.
were listening to, what are you trying to achieve? What is the current state of play? How do we design something that matches what you're looking for?
Yeah.
And they helped me design and launch Drawdown Labs together collaboratively. And so, I think, and then since then, I know IDEO has been on a very exciting journey with how they try to embed climate across different design
Oh,
functions.
I didn't know that. That's good to hear.
Yeah, so they're really building that out now, and so I think it's about kind of looking at the different aspects of design, and are you interested in like product design, organizational design, graphic design, and even if sustainability isn't your job title, there are ways to infuse that into your work, right? And I think
Mhm.
that is going to be the future. I mean, I don't think we're going to be spending a lot more years designing things that are not compatible, with
Yeah.
sustainability. And so getting really, kind of just looking for ways to infuse that into whatever type of design work you do. And then also looking at, how can you raise conversations internally about climate change, and how can you look at how you can influence your clients? Designers have a really important role, and probably in many cases access other influential clients. And how can you influence them and use your sort of use your relationships to not just bolster climate action inside your own wherever you're working, but also with your clients. So I would say, I mean, the most important thing to me as you're looking at where to work, is sort of,
Mm.
where can I have the what am I really good at, and how can I infuse climate the most there? And if it seems like the company, or a business that you're looking at working for is open to sort of being pushed or being challenged, like, which hopefully most design
Yeah.
firms would be,
That's what
it
we, yeah.
sounds like, it sounds like that would be sort of what I would look at.
So it sounds like we're perfect partners here, and that the Climate Designers Group as a whole, and then this podcast as well, we're trying to get that information to design educators like you are through the every job is a climate job mantra. And when they graduate, right, they can bring that to these conversations with the clients. So, um, I mean,
Exactly.
that's why I chose you and Drawdown Labs and the Drawdown sectors for this season.
That's so exciting. And
Yeah,
you're
happy to
absolutely right. I
do it.
mean, yeah, I mean, it really is. I think it's such a, it feels like a beautiful coming together of, of climate and design in a way that we need, in a
Yeah,
generative and like exciting and creative way. I think that's exactly what the world needs.
I agree. And since this season is all about that and solutions to our climate problems, I'm interested in what you felt some of the successes have been with Drawdown Labs in terms of really positive outcomes. Do you have any favorites or some success stories that that can be inspirational for our listeners?
Yes.
Well, that's
I'm
good.
I'm laughing because some of them, um, I think part of what needs to happen is, like, I think feathers do need to be ruffled, and that's why I'm laughing, because some
Oh
of the
yeah,
things that I would mention are not necessarily things that have made everyone in my organization and
it wasn't
happy,
kumbaya.
because they have, some things that I am the most proud of were the most controversial.
I like
And
that.
I, I mean, I think that's what we need to do for those people that have a relative comfort and stability. Like, we better be trying to push as hard as we can,
Mhm.
right? And so one of the things that I'm proudest of was, there's a lot of these like business climate coalitions out there run by NGOs, where, NGOs work with businesses and try to like lift them up as climate leaders. And a lot of times it's a lot of greenwashing and a lot of PR. And I
Mm,
did not want that to happen with Drawdown Labs. And so, I was sort of like, oof, as an NGO, we have very, very little leverage over these big behemoth corporations. But one leverage point we do have is, like we can talk freely about how much our business partners are doing or not to to publicly. And
Oh,
so, yeah,
you can name names.
we can name names. So there have been a few instances where, I have been open about my disappointment in various ways. There was, specifically one thing I'm thinking of where we took out a full page ad in the New York Times last year
Oh my.
to say we used our own programmatic budget, took out a full page ad in the New York Times. It is not inexpensive to do, and
It must be totally expensive, right?
it's very expensive. But we felt like, the Build Back Better Act was felt like it was hanging in the balance. We were hearing from legislators that, hey, we really need business support to get this over the line. And the Build Back Better Act is what then it ultimately failed, but then became, major portions of it became the Inflation Reduction Act. So we were hearing like we really need businesses to step up and be loud about their support for a climate bill. And so we were like, what's the biggest, boldest thing we could do? And we took out a full page ad in the New York Times and, big, bold said, we have the solutions to the climate, or, the world has the solutions to the climate crisis. Now we need Congress to act, basically. We need Congress to pass bold climate policy. And we went out to all of our business partners and extended community and said, put your logo on this and like show that that you support this. And most did, but a few of our very big, kind of largest corporations that we work with did not. And so
Surprising.
yeah. So we got all kinds of questions from the press like, oh, I noticed that XYZ companies didn't have their logo. And I gave very candid interviews about how disappointed I was and how I question whether they're climate leaders if they're not going to support
Good
climate
for you.
policy. So that was, and then we were told later, the Business Voice did make a difference in getting the Inflation Reduction Act passed ultimately. So it was I'm sharing that story because it was controversial, and then I did get in some hot water with certain of our business partners. But ultimately, I think it's important for us to find accountability and courage where we can, and if we can push things, even if it's controversial or not totally comfortable, I think that's where we are. That we have such little time, and we need to pull out all the stops and use every tool we have at our disposal.
Yeah, well, our country owes a lot to you then with that. You should get some sort of presidential medal of honor. Goodness. I didn't know that. That's so cool.
Oh, there's no way you could ever tie. That's the thing about climate change. It's so hard to ever say I helped do that,
Right.
But in some very small way, I think we like to think that we played some small part.
I don't get the New York Times, but I was already aboard with it. So
yes. Well, I will hang my proverbial, my Eric granted presidential medal in the background of my Zoom calls.
If I could, and if one day I am president of the United States, I'll give it to you. That's going to be highly unlikely, unfortunately.
We can dream.
Yeah. Well, what's next for you at Drawdown? What's your success story at Drawdown in the future? How do you measure success for you?
Wow, that is a great question.
Yeah, good luck answering that one.
Yeah. You know what? I've actually been working with a coach who gave me this great advice. She said, what got you here is not necessarily what's going to get you to the next place. And so, or I'm bungling the words, but something like that. Basically,
yeah, I get the idea though.
Yeah. And sort of, so I am in this process of sort of okay, what is next? And yes, we've my team has done, a lot of work to do these employee resources and really try to help employees get more active on climate change. But what's next? Is it, thinking about how are employees protected in the workplace? Is it unionizing? Is it, how do we, as we start to see more layoffs in certain sectors, how do we
Yeah.
use that? I mean, I'm not sure, but I think, we're sort of in this process now of thinking, okay, we've started this conversation, provided some resources. How do we keep pushing? And how, like, what's the next thing for us to push?
Hmm.
So that is uh, that is very much a in process
Bet.
thought exercise right now. But I would love to come back to you on that one.
Yeah. Well, I hope we can help here in
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
we want to get more of these climate solutions in the classroom, so that there's just more people knowing, like you said, we have the solutions. We just need to embrace them and do them. And there's these people with gobs of money, and
Yeah.
if they put their money, where it needed to be for the future of our civilization, right?
Right.
We see such big changes. So I hope we can help with you with what's next at Drawdown.
I love that. I mean, there are so many incredible synergies between your work and ours. So that definitely feels
A
like the
100%.
frontier. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're running out of time here, and it comes to, again, my favorite question. By now, my listeners should know what that is, and I want to put you in design educator's shoes just for a moment, hopefully designer shoes, and share with us through your own work and knowledge and experience. What would you do? What would you assign if you were teaching my class?
Oh,
Yeah.
what would I
Yeah, you
assign
can do anything.
teaching your class?
Well,
Ooh, I would think, I mean, I'm really intrigued right now about organizational design.
mhm.
And I don't know if that's a component of your class, but just thinking about how systems function and
It is totally.
yeah, okay, and how to exert pressure in various parts of the system, and kind of identifying leverage points, like, yeah, I think of like almost like a power mapping exercise, which I guess is
Ooh.
sort of like could be a design challenge. And thinking about, I don't know if you would want to go as broad as like capitalism itself, but looking at, just like the systems around us, and how do we how do we apply some design principles to moving our economic system toward one that um, you know, is not so incessantly focused on profit above all else, and can
Mm.
also value human and planetary health. And to me, that there are aspects of that are a major design challenge. And where is their power, and who has influence, and mapping out. I don't know if this is necessarily a design challenge, but kind of mapping out, like, okay, we have the market, the broad, like, sort of capital markets. And then there are investors and corporations and banks and individuals. And what is the design of this whole system that we've set out for ourselves that is like locking us into these decisions we're making that are digging us into our
Mhm.
own grave, and where are no pun intended.
Yeah. Oh,
Um, but, and just if they're design, like, how might we like maintain, I don't know what the how might we question is there, but um how
it
might
might
we
lead us to
design.
a good question in the end, right?
Yeah, maybe that's the question, not just like how might we design another like economic system, but like how do we work with what we've got right now? Because we
Mhm.
know what we have. We know the different points of leverage we have. We know the different like systems that are in place. Um maybe the design question is like, where are opportunities for design to influence this system?
That's a great
Or
question.
yeah,
It's a
I don't
great
know.
project. And yes, indeed, systems thinking, right, is something that I teach in my classes with an emphasis on life-centered
Oh,
as opposed to human-centered. Because
I
we've seen
love
what
that.
problems that can cause.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I've never heard of that, but I
Yeah,
love it.
it's
That's
all
a
in it.
great reframe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
Life-centered design. Yes.
So yes, your assignment is something that definitely it's a great design assignment. Um, Same wavelength. This is why we're good drawdown and climate designers match. Where
Yeah.
this is what I'm doing in my classroom. You know,
Very
I want
cool.
students to think this way, and they're not going to be able to unless they see how everything is connected.
Yes. Well, if any of your students ever want to help me out with a power mapping exercise,
Hey,
looking inside some big corporations, like where's their power? How can we give employees more power? How do we like access the decision makers? And what are all the things? If you ever have any students interested in that area,
oh,
feel free to
surely,
send them
yeah.
my
Well,
way.
I name dropped two students today, and hopefully they have listened to this, and they will reach out to you.
Well, I look forward to listening to
Yeah.
that recording. Yeah.
Well, it was a great time today. I really enjoyed hearing more about your work at Drawdown Labs and what you hope to do. And I think we have a great opportunity to work together to help to make sure everyone knows every job is a climate job.
I love it. Eric, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity. And this was a really fun
Thank
conversation. And I look
I
forward to
agree.
more to come.
Yes, definitely. And before we go, where can we find you online again, Jamie?
So projectdrawdown.org on the web. And then on Twitter, Project Drawdown is at Project Drawdown. And I am at JABECKX on Twitter.
Climify is produced, edited, and engineered by me. A huge special thanks to Ellen Keith Shaw and Christine Pilot for their gorgeous work on the new branding, Batul Rashik and Mark O'Brien for their design help, and Brandy Nichols for her strategic guidance on improving the offerings of this podcast. If you enjoy the work we all do here, and you have a spare minute or two, we truly appreciate if you left a rating and review over at Apple Podcasts. The more folks that review our program, the higher the algorithm pushes up Climify in the search results. And in turn, the more likely we all can learn how to become climate designers.